SpongeBob fans have a lot of different answers when it comes to their worst episodes, and weirdly, one title keeps popping up: SpongeBob You're Fired from Season 9. If you look around the internet, people put it in their top 10 worst, sometimes even top 3. Hell, sometimes it's even the top of their list. But here's the thing, if memory serves me right, I don't recall it being that bad. The story is simple, the jokes are fine, the dialogue is solid. And yet the hate for this episode is way louder than the hate for episodes that are objectively way worse. What did fans see that made this episode feel so wrong? Did I miss something? So I rewatched the episode carefully, frame by frame, to see if the hate is actually justified. Well, turns out, the fans were right. Something is clearly off with the characters, but not for the reasons people usually point to. And the more I look at it, the more I realize this episode brings a way deeper story than just about unemployment. The episode starts completely normal, before all the chaos that happens later. SpongeBob is doing what he loves most, working at the Krusty Krab. He splits into tiny versions of himself, zooms around washing dishes at light speed, flips a perfect patty like a man who has never once questioned his purpose in life. It's just SpongeBob being SpongeBob. And the funny thing is, all of this is important, for reasons I'll explain later, so remember it carefully. One of them being, the episode wants you to see SpongeBob at his highest point, before it drops him to his lowest. Because right away, Mr. Krabs walks in and hits him with one of the worst business decisions in television history.
Well, actually, SpongeBob, there's 2 words, and they're not very good. You're fired.
He fires SpongeBob over saving 5 cents. 5 cents! I mean, yeah, it's Krabs, we shouldn't be surprised. But you would think he learned something after selling SpongeBob's soul for 62 cents. Apparently not. Squidward also asks to be fired, but Krabs refuses. Says Squidward has seniority, of course. What's surprising is that Squidward didn't over-celebrate here, because I somewhat expected him to do a full tap dance, confetti, balloons, the whole SpongeBob is gone parade. I mean, he did get some relief out of this decision, but he was still kind enough to gently escort SpongeBob out.
You know, it just won't be the same around here without you. You'll have to visit sometime, as a customer.
I don't know, man. That sounded like it came from the heart. This is where some people felt the tone shift for the first time. SpongeBob didn't take it well, obviously. He went home and got into a pretty deep depression. Everything he does reminds him of the Krusty Krab.
I used to feed everyone in Bikini Bottom. Now I just feed you.
It's one of the first signs this episode isn't playing with his emotions for laughs. Then Patrick shows up, ready to help in the only way Patrick knows how, by being aggressively unhelpful. Said he's gonna show him the wonders of fun employment.
Meet me tomorrow morning, and I'll introduce you to the wonders of the unemployed lifestyle.
The next day, Patrick comes back and SpongeBob looks like he hasn't slept in a week. He was clearly broken from what happened yesterday. Patrick drags him into Squidward's backyard to get free breakfast, then shows off his rock napping lifestyle. And yeah, this is where fans say the episode drags, because we are already 9 minutes into the episode and SpongeBob hasn't found anything to lift his mood. It was indeed pretty slow for a SpongeBob episode. I guess the writers really wanted to show how far SpongeBob had fallen, by really showing they're living 2 different realities. Right after that, they head to Sandy's tree dome, where she is hosting an all-you-can-eat volunteer test, which is scientist terms for, I need test subjects, and I'm not paying them.
This here's a psychological test to see how much weird gunk folks will eat, if it's free.
A random fish's head inflates like a balloon, a tiny Patrick grows out of Patrick's head,
More.
Very interesting.
and SpongeBob almost eats toxic mystery goop before Sandy stops him. But then, out of nowhere, Sandy switches into therapist mode and tells SpongeBob he needs structure. He needs a new job. And this is where we hit turning point number 2, because now we get the infamous job hunting montage. The part everybody remembers and kinda hates. SpongeBob walks into Weenie Hut, excited and optimistic. The manager said sure and gave him a job. SpongeBob inspects the grill, realizes they use rollers, and immediately improvised by turning hot dogs into weenie patties. The manager fires him instantly. It's clearly the same joke from The Big Switch. Every bit of food he touches becomes a Krabby Patty in disguise. He literally cannot turn it off. Then he tries making pizza next door. He spins the dough like a professional, throws it in the oven, and then proudly reveals his creation: a pizza patty. Fired again. Then the next job, and the next, and the next. Each new boss gets a patty remake. At this point, you get the real joke. SpongeBob cannot stop being a fry cook for patties. It is who he is. Every job becomes the Krusty Krab whether he wants it to or not. But here's the interesting part. He even keeps calling every manager Mr. Krabs by accident, because he's still basically traumatized. Tells you how much respect he has for crooked crabs. A lot of fans saw this as dragging because the tone jumps so often that the purpose gets lost. Again, people call this sequence repetitive, especially when you see SpongeBob get fired 4 times in 4 minutes. He comes home in despair once again. But at least Gary's there, ready to comfort him. And as if the day couldn't get any worse, they're all out of snail po. So SpongeBob decides to make his own.
One homemade can of snail po.
I deadass thought the snail po was going to turn into a Krabby Patty again. At least SpongeBob still has some enlightenment after all that mess from work. Gary and Patrick still enjoy his cooking, whatever happens. Now, you gotta focus here because things suddenly escalate hard. Like the episode realizes, oh yeah, we should maybe have a climax. Some weenie thugs just abduct him and chain him next to the roller, forcing him into unpaid slider labor. Said the customers love his weenie sliders. Then the pizza boss snatches him. Then every restaurant owner kidnaps him. These mascots are suddenly fighting furiously in the back alley. It's just chaos. And right when all hope seems lost, a giant Krabby Patty superhero drops from the sky and beats everyone. He beats the mascots, eats Senor Taco alive, carries SpongeBob like it's the finale of an Avengers movie.
Well, here we go again.
A completely insane moment until the suit comes off. It is Squidward, of all people. This is one of the best parts of the episode, in my opinion. Petty, dramatic Squidward secretly rescuing SpongeBob because he cannot live without the smell of properly cooked patties.
You know I hate you, right? Well, I hate the smell of burning Krabby Patties even more.
The man didn't even stutter saying it. Turns out, with crabs running the grill, the place is destroyed. Smoke everywhere, food burnt, and of course, customers fleeing. Mr. Krabs has lost everything because he fired the best fry cook in the ocean over a nickel. And SpongeBob cleans up the entire restaurant in 30 seconds. The episode ends on a cheap Krabs gag. A pay-to-use toilet. Old Man Walker digging for a nickel. A silly, classic SpongeBob button to finish everything off. Now, from a distance, this looks like a very okay SpongeBob episode. A little messy here and there, sure, but nothing outrageous. So why did people hate it so much? Why does this episode leave such a strange feeling? And that brings us to the first big problem. On paper, the complaints all sound straightforward, especially pace-wise. But once you actually look at them, they don't fully match what's happening in the episode. People say it feels like an 11-minute plot recycle of The Big Switch, stretched into a 24-minute special. And I get why they feel that way. A SpongeBob episode this slow would feel like padding. But I personally think the Patrick segment is actually solid. It's showing how emotionally crushed SpongeBob is and how wholesome their friendship is. The montage shows SpongeBob can't be anything but a fry cook for Krusty Krab. Every failed job pushes him back toward the Krusty Krab. At least it fits the story, but fans just can't let it slide, because again, something felt wrong, even if the writing was following a clear purpose. Then you have the second complaint. The plot makes no sense. Mr. Krabs firing SpongeBob for 5 cents? Then SpongeBob has a 10-minute identity crisis. But then, out of the blue, some mascots kidnapped him. Sandy is also being very unlikable by feeding people glowing orange sludge. I mean, come on. Bikini Bottom has never made sense. Some of the best episodes in the series are built on stupid logic. If anything, some of the best episodes we have come from Krabs being overly cheap. So clearly, logic is not the problem, something else is. But the most obscure complaint I see online was the cultural backlash. Back when this episode aired, some people twisted it into a commentary on unemployment benefits, and suddenly, this silly special was being discussed like it was a political message. People didn't like how they portrayed SpongeBob being useless, like he can't do anything to get a proper job, as if he was unemployable because he was the problem, thus painting a picture of unemployed people are jobless because they're problematic and they deserve it. Even if the episode itself never says any of this, that reputation spread way faster than the actual plot. A lot of fans walked in with a negative expectation before the episode even aired. And yet, none of these complaints actually explain what's wrong with the episode itself. Fans were right to sense that something was wrong, but the reasons they gave? Most of them don't hit the real target. And to understand what the actual problem is, we need to go deeper into how the episode handles its emotions. The answer is simple. The real problem is the tone. And the more you think about it, the clearer it gets. This episode has no idea what emotion it wants you to feel, and every time it picks one, it immediately sprints in the opposite direction. Let me show you what I mean. The episode starts with genuine heartbreak that comes from one of Mr. Krabs' stupidest decisions. SpongeBob loses the job that defines his identity. He goes home, sits alone, and everything reminds him of work. These scenes are quiet, uncomfortable, and honestly, a little too real for anyone who's been laid off before. But the episode doesn't stay in that space long enough to mean anything, because about 6 minutes in, boom, we cut to Patrick eating tomatoes in Squidward's yard, then radioactive orange sludge, then a tiny Patrick grew out of Patrick's head. The mood just does not flow, and that emotional whiplash is what people are actually reacting to, even if they don't know how to explain it. More confusion comes from the setup and somewhat inconsistent logic in the plot. I know that sounds confusing, but let me explain. Being fired over 5 cents feels like a joke. Classic Krabs moment, right? But SpongeBob's emotional collapse is shot like a drama. He floods the Krusty Krab with tears. He even begs to work for free. This is heavy stuff for SpongeBob. And then the resolution is, oh yeah, Krabs can't cook, you can come back now. The episode is constantly stepping on its own emotional momentum. That's another reason the job montage feels weird. The purpose of it is good. It shows that SpongeBob can't be separated from Krabby Patties. He literally is the Krusty Krab. But maybe we didn't need the patty joke 4 times in a row. So yeah, you never get to settle into one feeling long enough to enjoy it. But when viewers can't figure out what they're supposed to feel, they assume the episode is bad, simply because the emotional signals were mixed. Fans were right, something was off here. They just couldn't put their finger on it. And once you remove the tonal chaos from the equation, something surprising happens. You start to see what the episode actually does well. A lot of things in this episode are actually gold. A lot of things in this special do work. Let's start with SpongeBob himself. Under all the chaos, there is a real character arc. He loses everything, spirals, tries to rebuild himself, fails, and ultimately realizes his purpose hasn't changed. That's classic seasons 1 through 3 emotional writing. People forget how emotional early SpongeBob could get. Meanwhile, the best thing this episode gives us is Squidward. This episode might secretly have one of my favorite Squidward moments in modern SpongeBob. He starts the episode annoying and smug. He enjoys SpongeBob leaving, but he does not celebrate like a cartoon villain. And then, out of nowhere, he shows up in a full Krabby Patty superhero costume to drag SpongeBob back home. This is the peak Squidward we saw in Dying for Pie. That reveal shouldn't work, but it does. It's one of the few modern-era moments that capture Squidward's full personality without flattening him. Even the little details, like Squidward being dressed in a pink princess gown afterward, feel like old-school SpongeBob humor. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but Patrick is actually helpful. Patrick is still Patrick here, but he tries. He shows up because he hears SpongeBob crying. He tries to share what makes him happy, and even supports him when he decides to get a job again. He's still Patrick, don't get me wrong, but he isn't the dangerously stupid version from modern seasons. Same with Sandy. She's not flanderized in this episode either. Weird experiments, slightly reckless, but still caring enough to stop SpongeBob from eating radioactive soup. For a character who sometimes gets sidelined, her presence here is pretty meaningful. If the tone leading up to this finale was handled better, this ending could have been one of the most loved payoffs in Season 9. So, what does all this mean? The initial hate actually blinded people from noticing what the episode does well. Because when you look at the structural elements, the character writing, and the core jokes, the episode is not a disaster. It's actually one of the more coherent stories in Season 9. The only things holding it back are tone, and the unfortunate timing of releasing a story about unemployment during a culture war about unemployment. So yes, fans were right, just not for the reasons they thought they were. So, is SpongeBob You're Fired one of the worst SpongeBob episodes ever made? Nah, I don't think so. Not even close. Is it messy? Definitely. But the real issue was just the tone. The episode kept pulling you towards something emotional, only to push you away the moment it got interesting. And fans felt that. They just misread where the problem came from. If anything, this whole thing proves something important. Most of the time, fans are right. Sometimes just not for the reasons they think. And that actually reminded me of something else. Because this isn't the first time a SpongeBob character got judged, hated, misunderstood, and memed into oblivion, while the real problem was hiding underneath the surface. There's one of the most controversial characters in the entire show, whose issues go way deeper than anyone realized. If you missed it, I broke it all down in the last video. So if you want to see a case where the fans are more right than even the writers intended, watch that one next. I'll see you on the next dive.